The stars beyond the observation deck of the Lucida Prime shimmer with a stillness that belied the unease crawling beneath Commander Isla Varen's skin. Her boots echoed faintly on the metal grating as she walked the curved corridor, the silence broken only by the whisper of air vents and the low hum of the ship's reactor core cycling beneath her feet. She was being drawn toward the quarantine bay. Though she hadn't been ordered, she hadn't even told the crew she was coming. Something about the uneventful sensor ping from earlier, the one flagged and then dismissed by the automated systems as a derelict escape pod, wouldn't leave her alone. Isla keyed, opened the observation hatch. The pod sat in the isolation chamber like a coffin, burned scar from atmospheric entry, frost still misting its outer layer. The data logs were corrupted, no transponder, no rescue beacon. A ghost from the deep void. She stepped through the airlock. Override codes already entered. The sterilization field shimmered across her armor. Within, the air was bitterly cold, still calibrated for cryostasis. The pod hissed open slowly, releasing a faint gust of chemically recycled air. Inside lay a man, pale, still. A medical thermal sheet covered him from neck to toe, its surface faintly glowing with biothermal sensors. His hair was dark, long by standard protocol, matted against his temples. His features were sharp, symmetrical, uncannily so. Isla frowned. It was like looking at someone who had been sculpted rather than born. She reached out, brushing her fingers against his wrist. Instantly, a flicker of warmth pulsed beneath the blanket, subtle, like an echo of a heartbeat from somewhere deeper than the body. Her breath caught. The ship's lights flickered. Only for a second, she pulled her hand back, glancing toward the surveillance camera in the corner. It remained dead. The feed had been lost earlier, hours after the pod was brought aboard. Isla turned her attention back to the figure. She didn't recognize him, but something about his face stirred memory, more feeling than image. A chill trickled down her spine, not from fear but recognition. Impossible. She had never met him. She pulled up the datapad hanging at her hip and tried another bioscan. Again, the results were scrambled. No identifiable DNA, no blood type, no retinal or facial match in the archives. The device couldn't even confirm if he was human. "Commander Varen," came a voice through her comms. It was Ensign Drex from the bridge. "We've got a minor system surge. Stabilizers just reset themselves. Did you run a diagnostic?" "Negative," she replied. "I'm in quarantine 6. The surge may have come from here." There was a pause, and then Drex answered. "Copy that. Engineering's on standby. Let us know if you need backup." She muted the channel. This wasn't something she wanted explained by ship's protocol. Isla leaned in closer. Her gloved hand hovered inches above his face now. The warmth from earlier was gone, replaced by an eerie stillness. She hesitated, then gently touched his cheek. The man inhaled. It was not a gasp or a twitch. It was a full, deliberate breath. His chest expanded under the thermal sheet, then fell again, slowly, as though remembering how to breathe. Isla stumbled back, her pulse quickening. His eyelids fluttered, revealing eyes the color of superheated plasma, impossibly vivid, like stars caught in motion. They fixed on her, unfocused at first, then narrowing with strange intensity. He tried to speak. His lips moved, but the sound that came out was static, raw, and fractured, like a broken radio transmission. He blinked, confusion darkening his expression. Then his gaze softened, settled. "Isla," he said, barely a whisper. She froze. No one aboard this vessel knew her name before her appointment. The pod had no access to crew files. There was no way he could know. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice low, cautious. He stared at her a moment longer, as if struggling to locate the answer inside himself. Then his gaze dropped to blanket. Isla followed his eyes and then saw it. The sheet was not just covering him. Underneath, a faint outline began to shift. A shape, organic in motion but mechanical in geometry, quivered just beneath the surface of the thermal material. It was like a skeletal limb of pure light, coiled along his body, not attached but part of him, integrated. She backed up, hand now hovering near her sidearm. The temperature in the chamber dropped abruptly. Frost formed around the base of the pod. "Don't move," she warned. The man thing didn't flinch. He seemed more confused by her fear than concern for his own safety. His voice cracked again, more like language this time. "Not weapon. I am a lock." "A lock to what?" she demanded. He shook his head slowly, the motion full of pain. "Don't remember. You were the key. You woke what was sealed." Isla's heart pounded. She reached for the control panel on the pod, inputting a command to reseal the cryo chamber. The console flickered, then spat an error code in red. Manual override disabled. She tried again. Same result. "System's rejecting me," she murmured. "Because it knows," the man said. His voice was steadier now. "You touched me. You triggered the reawakening protocol." "What protocol?" He looked at her with something like sorrow. "I don't know yet, but I know it started when you were a child." She stared. That made no sense. Her childhood had nothing to do with deep space anomalies. Her parents had died in a transport crash. She'd grown up in a ground-level orphanage on the wet side of Tarsa 7. Nothing about it connected to anything happening here. Except for the dreams. The same one, over and over. A falling star. A whisper in a voice she could never place. "Not yet, Isla. Sleep." He lay back, visibly exhausted, his breath now shallow but rhythmic. "I need to report this," she said quietly, to herself more than to him. "No." His voice was sharp now, the first sign of urgency. "Not yet. They'll shut me down. You'll be marked." Isla stared down at him, torn. Everything about this situation screamed danger. But so did the idea of letting others near it before she understood what had just happened. He wasn't just some unknown experiment. He knew her name. He knew things buried so deep in her mind she stopped believing they mattered. "I'll be back," she said at last. "Don't move." He gave a weak, bitter laugh. "I wouldn't even know how." She turned and left the chamber, the door sealing behind her with a hydraulic hiss. Her boots clicked faster now, her mind racing ahead of her steps. Back on the bridge, she knew questions were waiting. System surges, failed data links, corrupted logs. All of it was traceable to the moment she touched him. She didn't need Viren, the ship's AI, to draw the connection. But there was a deeper question threading to the core of her thoughts. If she was a key, what exactly had she unlocked? And more importantly, what was waiting to be let out? Isla didn't sleep. She sat cross-legged on the floor of her quarters. The overhead lights dimmed, her eyes fixed on the blinking cursor of the encrypted data terminal. The ship's AI, Viren, had rerouted all diagnostic queries related to Cryopod directly to her console under her override. Technically, it was protocol. In practice, it meant she was sitting alone with a mystery no one else on the Lucida Prime even suspected was alive. Literally. The man in the pod, no, under the blanket. His vitals still defied logic. Every scan she ran returned fragments of incompatible data. Neurofrequency patterns that registered as both human and non-human. EM pulses like those found in synthetic cores. No matching sequences in the military or civilian biometric databases. And the most inexplicable part, every time she reviewed the moment he spoke her name, the internal sensors within the room registered a 1-degree drop in temperature and a spike in gravitational fluctuation localized to within 2 meters of the pod. Reality had shifted around him. She rose, keyed in a final override, and headed back to Quarantine 6. The corridors were quiet, and she moved like a shadow between arcs of blue lighting. At this hour, no one questioned the commander's route. Authority, like secrecy, was best used in silence. Inside the chamber, he was awake, sitting upright now, the blanket draped loosely over his lap. He looked both fragile and unnaturally poised, like someone recently born but carrying the weight of centuries behind his gaze. His skin shimmered faintly under the diagnostic lights, and though he had not moved beyond the confines of the pod, Isla felt the gravity of his presence deep in the moment she stepped in. "You came back," he said. His voice had stabilized, smoother but still edged with strain, as if every word fought through layers of static memory. "You expected me to?" she asked, standing just beyond the containment boundary. I remember your face, he said slowly. Not your name, not your voice, just your face at the edge of a dying sky. Isla took a breath and stepped through the barrier. You said I'm the key. I need know to what? He looked down at his hands, studying them like they belonged to someone else. I don't know everything yet. I'm not fully restored. Something in me was cut away. Your vitals are unreadable. No identification markers. No baseline. Are you human? I think I was. He met her eyes, or I was built to believe I was. The silence between them stretched. Isla sat beside the pod, resting her arms on her knees. There's something inside the blanket, she said. It reacted when I touched you. What is it? He glanced toward the folds of the thermal sheet. It's a neural cocoon, designed to sustain me beyond memory. When you touched me, you completed the circuit. You weren't supposed to be here yet. She frowned. Yet. There was a sequence, a delay, a release condition tied to time and proximity. It was supposed to trigger when you were older, different, ready. I am older, she snapped. What does that even mean? It means something altered the plan. Maybe I woke up too soon. Maybe you did. Isla stood abruptly, tension radiating through her shoulders. My life isn't part of some program. I don't remember you. I don't know you. His gaze didn't waver. But I knew you. I was made to protect you. Her throat went dry. From what? He hesitated. From what they made me carry. Isla turned away, her mind reeling. This wasn't a conversation. It was a mirror held up to a future she hadn't chosen, a role written for her in a story she hadn't agreed to play. You expect me to believe I'm tied to something that predates my own memory? She asked. I don't expect anything. I only know that when you touched me, something inside me recognized you. Not just your body, your presence, your signal. She looked back at him, then reached into her jacket and pulled out her personal data implant. It was embedded in every officer at birth, calibrated to their neural signature. She held it near his arm. The response was instant. His skin shimmered with light, mapping glyphs along his veins. Her device vibrated violently, then shut off with a burst of static. What the hell was that? She whispered. Our frequencies are linked, he said. We've always been. She stepped back, her pulse thundering in her ears. Viren's voice broke through the silence. Commander Viren, a security alert has been registered in engineering. Power fluctuations and electromagnetic anomalies. Shall I deploy containment measures? Isla hesitated, eyes still on him. No. Hold all responses. Route surveillance to me. Yes, Commander. She looked back to the pod. Did you cause that? I'm not doing anything intentionally, he said. But now that I'm awake, things will start to move. Systems, memories, protocols. Some are mine. Some aren't. She narrowed her eyes. You were part of a project, weren't you? Something black file. Something off-grid. He nodded. I think it was called the Orla Directive. That's all I remember. A name carved into fire. Isla's skin went cold. She had heard that name only once before, during a classified orientation years ago, when she'd been handed a redacted case file and told to forget it. The Orla Directive had been marked as an experimental fusion of human emotion and quantum consciousness, a way to store not just information, but purpose. The program was said to have vanished after an AI rebellion on the outer moons of Taraxis. No survivors. What did they do to you? She whispered. His eyes were haunted. They made me feel everything. The word struck her like a physical blow. He wasn't just a synthetic shell or a memory storage vault. He was a vessel for emotional memory, probably millions of lives, downloaded, archived, relived. You're carrying pain, she said softly, and joy, love, regret, whole lifetimes that weren't mine. Her hands trembled at her sides. Why would they put that in you? To keep it alive, to learn what it meant, to use it, and maybe, he added, voice lower now, to hide it from those who destroy it. Isla looked at him, truly saw him for the first time. He wasn't a threat. He was a repository of humanity's most fragile truths, guarded under a blanket, like a secret too dangerous to name. Then he stiffened. "What is it?" she asked. "They're coming," he said. Something outside the ship. They felt me wake up. Who? I don't know, but they'll want me back. Or dead. Alarms didn't sound. No red lights blinked. But Isla believed him. She stood, her voice steady now. "Then we'll be ready." His eyes widened slightly. "You're not afraid?" "Oh, I'm terrified," she said. "But I've spent my whole life wondering why I didn't fit anywhere. Why my mind always felt like it was echoing something I couldn't hear. Maybe this is it. Maybe you're the answer to that question." He looked up at her with a flicker of something approaching peace. "Or maybe you're the question no one knew how to ask." She gave him a faint, wry smile. "Guess we'll find out together." She turned toward the exit. Before the door slid shut behind her, she looked back once more. He had already laid back down, eyes open, watching her leave, not with fear, but with the calm of someone finally home. And somewhere in the deepest stretch of the ship's sensor array, a distant echo bounced back toward them. An unknown vessel. Inbound. The docking bay was quiet. Too quiet for a ship under active alert. Isla walked with deliberate calm, her uniform zipped to the collar. Every step echoing like the prelude to something ancient. Viren had traced the inbound vessel to a slow, deliberate approach. No comms, no registration signature, and no standard propulsion markers. It wasn't drifting. It was watching. The stranger, who now called himself Kale, remained in Quarantine 6 under her direct lockout authority, but the weight of his presence pressed in her mind like gravity bending the edge of thought. Since their last conversation, systems had begun to behave erratically. Lights dimmed and flickered. Access logs rewrote themselves. The ship pulsed with something unseen, and Isla knew it wasn't just mechanical. She stood before the observation glass now, eyes on the alien ship. Smooth, elliptical, matte black hull. No thrusters, no seams. Like it had grown rather than been built. A presence rather than a construct. Viren spoke again in her ear. No signs of communication. However, internal sensors register an increase in localized quantum variance near your location. Defined variance. Time dilation pockets. Reality flickering. Mild but spreading. Isla clenched her jaw. Is it him? Unclear, but correlation with his vital spikes is statistically significant. She turned away from the window. Seal all internal airlocks. Triple quarantine around Sector 6. Inform no one. Yes, Commander. She marched back toward containment, her mind racing. This wasn't just a man with buried data. This was something deeper, an ignition point for a cascade she couldn't yet see the shape of. Inside, Kale sat upright, eyes closed, his breathing steady like meditation. The blanket lay discarded beside him, revealing the intricate lines of circuitry running like veins across his arms and collarbones, symmetrical, glowing faintly gold. "You feel it, don't you?" she said as she entered. "I always knew it would come," he replied without opening his eyes. "The moment I reconnected to you, the tether would snap." They were waiting for that signal. Isla didn't bother pretending confusion. "Who are they?" "The curators. Architects of the directive. They seated me with their truths, but you were always meant to decide what came next. That's why they bound your code to mine." She narrowed her eyes. "I didn't ask to be bound to anything. I'm not a weapon." "No," he said, finally looking up. "You're the key to choosing what's worth saving. That's what makes you dangerous to them." Outside, the alien ship pulsed, as if in response. Isla felt it then, an undeniable pull, like her thoughts were being stretched in toward something vast and listening. Kale stood, carefully, still weak but balanced. "They're not here to retrieve me. They're here to erase the connection. You and I, we're a variable they didn't account for." She crossed her arms, trying to hold on to logic. "I need proof, something I can act on." He looked at her with something close to sorrow. "I don't have proof. I am the proof. They won't stop until the link between us is broken. Physically. Permanently." The door behind her locked with a soft hiss. Isla knew Viren had followed the command, but she felt suddenly, irreversibly trapped. Not by danger, but by inevitability. "You said you carried emotion," she said slowly. that you were filled with lives. Are any of them mine? Kale tilted his head, a flicker of gold lighting his eyes. I carry the memory of your mother. Isla's heart skipped. What? She was part of the original team that designed me. One of the last to encode emotion into the Matrix. She gave me her sorrow and her hope, and her love for you. You're lying, Isla whispered. I couldn't lie about this, he said gently. I remember her tears. I remember her voice when she said your name. She believed the only way to protect you was to keep you unaware. Isla stepped back, trembling. Why didn't anyone tell me? Why keep me in the dark? Because knowledge was a trigger. If you learned too soon, the directive would have found you. They're not just observers. They prune what grows in the wrong direction. The alien vessel began to vibrate visibly through the observation glass. Its surface rippled like water, then solidified again. Then we run, she said. We get off this ship and disappear. Kale shook his head. You can't run from them. They move across time as much as space. They don't need to catch you. They just erase the parts of reality where you mattered. Isla looked at him, 1,000 instincts screaming in her blood. She had trained for war, for insurgency, for diplomacy, but none of it had prepared her for this. Being told her existence was a fork past some hidden power wanted to burn closed. Then what? She demanded. What do we do? We fight back, Kale said, but not with weapons. With memory. You need to go into me, into the archive. Extract what your mother left behind. It will unlock everything. Into you? He stepped forward, holding out a hand. Neural sync. You touch the cocoon again, this time with intention. I'll guide you, but once inside, you'll only have minutes before the curators breach the ship's field. We can't afford hesitation. Isla stared at his hand, the glowing circuitry, the steady eyes that somehow held the emotion of people long dead. Her people. She reached out. The moment her palm touched his, the world blinked, colors inverted, sound stretched into silence. Her body dropped away. And then she was standing on a shoreline made of stars, memory crashing like waves. Children running beneath alien moons. A woman's voice singing a lullaby. Codes etched into the skin of time. Her own face, much younger, reflected in Kale's eyes as he whispered, Remember what was taken. She moved through it all, following strands of light like veins in glass, each one a thread of someone's past. Her mother stood at the center, hands outstretched, surrounded by a sphere of memories locked tight in light. My daughter, the memory whispered, they will come for you, but only if you remember will you matter more than they can erase. He is not your weapon. He is your witness. Together, you are choice. Isla reached out, touched the memory, and fell. The world snapped back. Her body hit the floor of the containment chamber with a jolt. Kale was on his knees, face pale, veins glowing wildly. You did it, he gasped. The archive is unlocked. What now? She asked, breathless. The ship shuddered. Lights went dark for half a second, then flickered back. Viren's voice was laced with distortion. Commander, they are breaching spatial anomalies across. Then silence. Kale looked at her, fear and awe mingled in his expression. They're coming through. Isla stood. Then we meet them. She turned toward the exit. The corridor lights flared red. Systems failed and rebooted in cascading succession. But she was no longer running from question. She was the answer. The ship fractured time as the breach intensified. Isla moved through the dim corridors like a spark traveling a fuse, every step pulling her closer to the inevitable rupture. Walls groaned under pressure from something that existed beyond physical dimensions. Light strobed in erratic pulses. The Lucida Prime was becoming less a vessel and more a battleground of perception. Kale followed her silently, his presence a steady hum beside the chaos unraveling around them. He no longer stumbled or wavered. Whatever she had awakened within the archive had anchored him, infused him with something new, resolve maybe, or memory redefined as purpose. The marks across his skin glowed constantly now, more like language and circuitry. The archive lived inside both of them now. They reached the central data spine, a vast vertical chamber encasing the ship's AI core, lit in bands of flickering blue. It pulsed like a dying heartbeat. Viren's voice had gone silent across all channels. Its last transmission cut off mid-sentence. Isla approached the interface column and laid her hand on the surface. The system responded, but sluggishly, as if resisting the order to stay awake. Kale looked around, frowning. They're threading into the ship's cognitive layer, not just hijacking controls, rewriting its memory of itself. They want to erase the record, Isla said. No, he turned, gaze darkening. They want to erase you. The record just goes with it. A deep tremor passed through the floor. For a brief second, the stars outside the viewing slit didn't move but shivered, like reality itself had blinked. Then came the sound. It wasn't a voice. It wasn't even sound in the traditional sense. It was presence, pressing the mind like wet iron, an intrusion both ancient and surgical. Isla doubled over, clutching her temples. Kale stumbled back, eyes wide, lips trembling with silent resistance. You were not meant to choose. The phrase etched itself into her skull like branding. Her pulse raced. Nausea and heat flooded her chest. But she didn't collapse. She stood up. No, she said through gritted teeth. I was meant to decide. The presence recoiled slightly. Kale stepped forward, clutching the side rail for balance. They're broadcasting override commands through time. They're not just here. They're everywhere your potential exists. Isla nodded grimly. Then we answer everywhere at once. She plunged her palm back onto the interface, pushing through firewalls and scrambled logic. The archive flickered behind her eyes, a map of remembered pain, joy, loss, resistance. She dragged it forward, lacing it through Viren's core, binding human emotion to synthetic function. Kale followed suit, merging his own memory's substrate into the stream. Together, they rewrote the ship's identity, not as a tool, not as a database, but as a witness, a sovereign being encoded with the emotional truth of what was worth protecting. Outside, the alien vessel pulsed violently, lashing out. A fracture split the containment hull, only meters wide, but wrong. Through it, the space beyond was not black, but prismatic, like glass fracturing through dimensions. Silhouettes floated inside, human-like, featureless, cloaked in fluid silver. They made no move to enter. They didn't need to. Kale gasped. They're scanning all versions of you across timelines, trying to find one that agrees to forget. Isla's voice was steel. There isn't one. One of the figures moved, its shape contorting. A tendril of light reached through the breach, unfurling like a question made physical. It moved toward Isla, gentle yet absolute. Not an attack, an offer. Surrender memory. Regain peace. It brushed her shoulder. For a moment, she felt it. Peace, warm and clean, a life without weight or doubt, where she was no commander, no child of buried truth, just a woman with a home, a name, a future. She almost accepted. Then Kale whispered, "That's not peace. It's amnesia." Isla turned toward the breach and tore the tendril away. "Try again," she said, "but do it somewhere I'm not watching." A wave of light burst outward from the breach like a scream, flooding the chamber in silence. Kale grabbed her, shielding her body as reality buckled inward. The archive within them burned bright, illuminating not just memory but will. The breach began to close. Slowly, unwillingly. Kale leaned close. They're collapsing this attempt. But they'll keep coming, again elsewhere, elsewhen. They'll always come, Isla said. But now I know. The light dimmed. The ship steadied. The breach sealed. The figures were gone. Silence returned. Kale lowered himself to the floor, exhausted. Isla stood over him, breathing hard, her fingers twitching with residual current. Around them, the Lucida Prime reasserted itself, lights brightening, corridors stabilizing. Viren's voice returned, weaker but intact. "Commander, diagnostic cycle complete. External anomaly no longer present. Archive integration confirmed." She exhaled slowly. "Good." Kale looked up. "You were supposed to be a fail-safe, a silent switch. Instead, you made yourself a firewall." Isla smiled faintly. "I've always had trouble following instructions." He laughed, short, breathless. We bought time, not peace. I know, but time is what truth needs. She helped him up. He steadied himself with one hand on her arm, the contact no longer foreign, no longer overwhelming, just connected. Outside, the stars resumed their ancient quiet. But in the deepest code of the Lucida Prime, new variables flickered, not directives, not programs, choices. And across time, somewhere unseen, the curators paused, not defeated but delayed, forced to reconsider. She had remembered. She had refused to forget. And now, she would never be alone again.